Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Sayfie here with Wright, our analyst, also former Michigan basketball player. We're here to break down Michigan's 87-70 blowout win over Michigan State on Tuesday night at Chrysler Center. Huge win for the Wolverines for their NCAA tournament hopes here. 2 regular season games remaining. We'll talk about the bubble and all that at the end of the show. But we'll break down the game itself first. And for those watching on YouTube, we have a picture here on the screen of Hunter Dickinson celebrating after one of his 13 made baskets. We were talking before we went on air that 13, that's a career high for Hunter Dickinson. That's about as many as you can get in a college game, it feels like. That's 13 celebrations for Hunter Dickinson. And he was celebrating after each and every make, looking over at the Michigan State bench. Tom Izzo obviously at one point had to stop the game or was talking to the officials, and there was a delay there, and the fans were going crazy and, telling them to tell him to stop. They did tell him to stop. Martelli said he forgot to tell Hunter to stop. And then he finally was like, oh, yeah, Hunter, stop doing that. Make it about your play. And he took him out for a second, put B. Johns in, but then Hunter comes back in. When he had that and one dunk, I mean, that was like the Tominaga technical, except a celebration where he was just running down the floor. And the Tominaga technical, obviously against Nebraska, everyone remembers that. But so I guess I just want to ask you about the antics there. But Hunter Dickinson, I said 13 made buckets, 33 points for him. That's a career high, one of the all-time performances in this rivalry. You talk about Stu Douglas making the shot or Zach Novak that same game going off. Mo Wagner, I think, had 27, right, in 2018. Trey Burke with the steal. Nick Stauskas with a bunch of points in 14. This is up there, if not one of the better performances I've seen. 21 points in the second half where he just took over. They were going to him possession after possession. Phil Martelli was, said that Howard Isley called a flawless game on offense. Not to take anything away from him, but when you have that in your bag where you can just say, hey, we're going to go to the big fellow, we're going to go to number one, it makes it a hell of a lot easier as well. And I thought they played really well. We'll hit on a bunch of topics here, but Hunter Dickinson is story number one.
Yeah, for sure. He was very good. He was very, very good. And throughout the game, I was thinking about a conversation I had with if you guys don't know, so one of the AAU coaches that coached Hunter coaches in the WCC, which is Hunter's conference. He also coached Hunter with AAU. That was my coach as well in AAU.
Who's that?
So like Mo Vest,
Okay.
Morello. And I talked with him before, and one thing about Hunter is that like people are like saying like, yeah, Hunter's doing all this stuff for show. Da, da, da. Vest told me that like Hunter's been doing this for as long as he's known him. It doesn't matter who it is, where he's at. He's going to talk his stuff and he's going to chirp and he's going to have fun because he loves basketball and he loves to do his thing and it keeps him engaged. And when you're on last night, especially a guy like Hunter, and you go 13 for 19, and you're basically eating, and like it's like not like he had 3 or 4 threes to go along with it because that would have been just ridiculous, right? But he was able to the spin baseline dunk and one, the other spin marble almost fell dunk. I mean, it was just a masterful game from both blocks, and he kind of showed off everything. And I think Michigan needed that, and I think they needed their leader to kind of come through like that and kind of put the team on his back. And like, yeah, guys stepped up too, but he was definitely the head of the train on that one for sure.
Yeah. And the thing I loved the most was, I was at that game in East Lansing, and they left him in single coverage a lot. They, he was aggressive to an extent where he was taking a lot of shots. He had 19 shots, as Phil Martelli pointed out in that game. He had 19 shots in this game. And a lot of those shots against Michigan State the first time around were hook shots. He's more 8 feet away. I don't know how many dribbles he averages a game, but I feel like he went well over that average in this game because he, as you said, just getting deep, getting deeper. Like, you're better, bigger, stronger than all of Michigan State's big guys. Why not just bury them deep and finish with some dunks? And if you watch the MGO Blue TV segment with Ed Kongursky, Frankie Collins was making fun of Hunter for finally dunking and finally being athletic. They've been telling him to do it for a while. So he did that in this game. I thought that was key, where he was patient. He was like, I'm just going to get all the way to the rim. As you said, some of those baseline spins, the and one towards the end of the game where, and they, as you said, they had to cycle in Julius Marble, Matty Sissoko, Joey Hauser guarded him at one point, Marcus Bingham guarded him, and none of them, they were just cycling him in and out, seeing if somebody could have some semblance of success, and they didn't. So an unbelievable performance from
It was
Hunter
all
Dickinson.
food. It's food. It was a buffet, and new big was just a new plate to just devour, and when you have someone like Marcus Bingham who ended up breaking the Michigan State shot blocking record in that game last night, if he's unplayable because he couldn't guard you, I mean, that's one of the better defenders in the league when it comes to being able to rim protect and have good hands and block shots. Um, it didn't matter who they threw at Hunter. Like, they threw a whole plethora type of dudes at him. They went, small ball for leverage with Joey. They went big brute with Marble. They went with a brute with some athleticism with Sissoko. They went with, extreme length, so 7 foot, 7'6" wingspan with Bingham, and it just did not matter who was on him.
No, not at all. My favorite thing about Michigan State's big guys is when they pick up a foul, they just put their hand up. They don't even complain. They're in there to foul. Matty Sissoko, I mean, the dude's in there to just maul guys, and they just cycle him in and out. But, yeah, obviously an unbelievable performance from Hunter Dickinson. Lifted them in that second half. Anytime, Michigan State made their run, but Michigan was able to answer with not only Hunter Dickinson but other guys, but it was mainly him, especially in that second half. I wanted to also touch on the defense from Michigan. I know Michigan State, they didn't play well offensively, but I know A.J. Hoggard was sick. Tom Izzo made sure to point that out in the post game. Tyson Walker was, I guess, injured apparently as well. But here's the thing. Michigan played into Michigan State's hands in that first meeting. They allowed 25 fast break points, 27 points on ball screens, which is just ridiculous. They were put in a blender by the Michigan State offense, which if you go back and if you look at the stats, like, they've lost 6 of 8 games or whatever it is. That was really, like, that was their best performance of the season. And, Michigan took away those free points, right? They limited to 9 transition points in this game. They limit them to 11 points on the ball screen in this game, going under screens. You have, you're playing drop coverage instead of hedging most of the time that first time around. So the adjustments Michigan made, I thought were key, and I thought they would be key coming into this game. Michigan State, they basically were like, we're gonna do the thing that we did the first time. We're gonna do what we tried to do to Purdue on Saturday as well. And so I think that is kind of the chess match that goes into playing teams twice in the Big Ten, a league that is scouted so well. What'd you see out of the transition defense? That was a huge emphasis. I know they gave up some points early in that area, but that makes it even more impressive that it was, only 5 points the rest of the game after a couple easy buckets early?
Yeah, I mean, that first game, we had guards who weren't even picking up the ball. And if you don't pick up the ball and you're playing against one of the better transition offense teams in the country, you're not going to have a good time. So I think they did a much better job at picking up ball first, and then getting out to their wings. But I think Eli Brooks has gotten a bit of heat because he's not really scoring as much or being as efficient. But the job that he did on Max Christie was very, very good. I mean, Max Christie was held 4 for 12 from the field, 0 for 2 from 3, I think. And then the buckets that Max did score, I mean, they were either not on him or he was like wide open in some like broken play. I think Eli did a very good job keeping him inefficient as he has been this year, but he's one of those guys where you see the talent and you know the talent is there. And it's just a matter for him to like break out into that. That's one. I would say Kobe Buffkin. Big shout outs to him because he gave up 4 points back to back. He gave up an offensive rebound and he fouled a 3-point shooter, I believe, in back to back possessions. He came out and he went right back in a few minutes later, which I think was big for his confidence and the staff. And from that point forward, defensively, he was pretty good, which was awesome to see. Frankie, they had some cluster concepts that would confuse a lot of teams. That included Frankie, it included also Kobe and some of the younger guys, and they communicated through that so well based off of where guys were cutting and going back door and coming up and popping out, and they did such a like night and day from what you saw, a couple months ago, whether it was Michigan State or somebody else. They're doing a lot better job communicating. Also, Musa did a really nice job too because Musa kind of took a step back for Hunter, right? He wasn't trying to be like, yeah, me and Hunter about to beast. It's like, no, Hunter's gonna eat. I'm gonna, I'll fill in where I can. He didn't try to overstep his bounds and mess up any type of flow. Caleb was much better defensively too. I just think everybody was on the same page, and I think they felt some type of way when they led up 93 to Illinois. That's a lot of points, and they took that personal in this game. They still gave it 70, but a lot of that was because the game was going pretty quick back and forth.
Yeah, for sure. It was a much higher possession game than I thought it was going to be. So Frankie Collins, I wanted to bring him up separately as well, and you touched on it. He was fantastic, and he might have saved that first half for Michigan. So Devontae Jones, 2 terrible turnovers early in the half within the first 3 minutes, 2 fouls, right? It was kind of like Devontae Jones against name your team early in the year, right? When he was getting in foul trouble, Seton Hall, some of those games. Frankie Collins comes in. I think we've said this before about him and Kobe at times this year, and there's no knock on them. This is a freshman thing. You kind of hold your breath a little bit. Okay, we'll see what they can piece together. Martelli said it too. He was like, we called on Frankie. We had confidence in him. We didn't say, hey, we're going to move Eli over to the point and try to bring somebody else in. But that was in the back of their mind that they had that option too. So they bring in Frankie. Looking up the stats, Michigan State, when Frankie Collins was in the first half, and he didn't play in the second half, but 4 of 16 shooting, 5 turnovers. When he was not in the first half, they were 7 of 12, no turnovers. He forced a couple of those turnovers himself. I know he turned it over a couple times himself as well, but he had 4 assists that were huge that he was able to run that offense. He didn't score in this game, but he was one of the more valuable guys in this game and allowed Michigan to lead by 16 at halftime. Also had 3 rebounds. Love watching him sky for rebounds, but he was outstanding. Terrence Williams was the guy that really shook things up as well, hitting 3 threes in the first half. Something that Tom Izzo kind of complained about in the post game as well, like he did about Xavier Simpson a couple of years ago, where if a guy doesn't hit threes on the scouting report and they do in the game, he gets mad that they were leaving him open. It's like, well, you're choosing to do that, but
Right.
that's kind of the way it goes. And Terrence Williams, every time you say no, why is he shooting that? He makes it. And every time he has a good shot, it seems like it's 50-50, but huge from the bench. Brandon Johns hits a 3 as well. He had 5 points. Those guys, for as much as we talk about the bench, and they haven't been good, but they lifted that team, I thought, in the first half.
They did. T. Will. Okay, so the minutes are in now. So T. Will played 22 minutes and 9 points and 4 rebounds. It's a pretty good job off the bench. But Caleb goes out, Devontae goes out, that game could have easily sputtered. But I think that, Frankie did, like, that's kind of what we were expecting early on, right? Him to be able, like, hey, you're gonna come in and you're gonna offer a change of pace. You're gonna give the team a different look. And there were times in the first half where Michigan didn't need to run offense. They were like, hey, give the ball to Frankie. And because he's bigger and stronger and more athletic than who's in front of him. And very seldomly you see that with the freshman guard, right? But he's super athletic. He can get to where he wants to go. He got to the paint relentlessly. And when the ball hits the paint, like, really good things happen. Because when the ball's in the paint, now everybody is looking away from their man and everyone just naturally comes to it. And he was attracted to like 3 players almost every time.
He tried going up over 3 guys at one point. I think that's when he drew the foul. Now, I said this, he was channeling Xavier Simpson. Remember Xavier came in that 2017 game at home and played really well, in maybe like 10 minutes of play, didn't put up great stats, but against Michigan State, he was channeling him, including with the 2 missed free throws. And if Xavier's watching, I'm sure he's still pissed off about that. But, that was just a great performance from the young fella.
Yeah, and and that's what you need when there's a situation where, like, Devontae had, yeah, there were like bad fouls, but they were like super unfortunate. Like, one of them, he was off balance with Tyson Walker in the paint. Walker didn't want to shoot that ball, but he was just off balance and nudged him. And then he had Max Christie on him, and then he just like acted like Max Christie is not like 6'6", 6'7", just tries to like throw the ball over him and then tries to get it back and he fouls again. He's just like stuff like that happens, right? And to have someone like Frankie to come in right away and do what he did, that's what they need. Like, they don't need Frankie to be that guy who's going to come in and be a Swiss Army knife yet. Like, he will be at some point, but you kind of saw in the second half when Jones came back, you saw how he impacted the game as well. Whether he's getting into the paint, dishing to the right guys, dishing to the guys from the perimeter, scoring the ball, taking advantage of his size and his height. I think he hit a 3 or 2. That was so awesome to see. Being him to stay dialed in when he sat for dang near 20 minutes in that first half, being able to come back and and do what he did, I think it shows even a lot of confidence between Devontae and Frankie, knowing that, hey, Devontae, I got you. I know you're down, but I got you. And then when the second half starts, hey, Frankie, good looks. I'll take it from here. Like, that was just really good to see. When we were very skeptical, not me, but a lot, like 98% of people were very skeptical of the point guard play over the first like 2.5 months.
For sure. And that's something Phil Martelli brought up last night, was the relationship between Frankie and Devontae, how they're rooting for each other, how Frankie plays better because Devontae's playing better, and he's seeing what Devontae's doing. They're helping each other out in practice. Devontae said last week they have one of the tightest relationships on the team, even though he feels like people on the outside try to, make it like a Frankie versus Devontae thing. Right. It's not the case. And last night was also big, and Martelli pointed this out as well, for the future. He basically said Frankie's going to have the ball next year. And I know Doug McDaniel's going to have something to say about that as well, or potentially a transfer. But, yeah, right now it's Frankie Collins that would be the guy next year if you had to put money on it, probably. And that's big for the future. I want to real quick hit on Caleb Houston specifically before we talk about Iowa a little bit, but
sure,
he's just become, and I know I saw you retweet the stat that I tweeted yesterday, that it has since gone up to his effective field goal percentage as a spot up shooter, leads the Big Ten 64.1% now, which, factors in, obviously goes up for threes. It adjusts for how many points you're scoring. So obviously helps that he's a sharpshooter. But for volume guys in the Big Ten, he leads the league. He has scored 21, 21, and 16 in his last 3 games. We talked about it last week, how much better he is at home. His three-point shooting percentage at home is up over 49%, which is just getting ridiculous at this point. He was 2 for 2 last night, and it just keeps going up. But, man, this kid is not playing like a lottery pick. I'm not saying that because I think he needs more in his toolbox, but he's playing and producing like one of the better players right now on Michigan's team, on several teams in the Big Ten. A lot of teams could use a Caleb Houston. He's just feels more mature to me out there, under control. What have you seen from him lately? I know this has been, I feel like every week it's like he's making those strides, but it's come to the point now where he's playing at a super high level.
Yeah, so like defensively, he's gotten a bit better, positionally and playing stronger, and not just letting guys drive, even though he's right there. He's playing a lot stronger in that regard. He also had foul trouble last night too, and he came right back in the second half like he's played the previous 20 minutes, and that's a sign of maturity, and that's really good to see, and that kind of goes with the whole. That kind of goes with the whole thing where, like, if you're a freshman and you played a lot of minutes this year, you're not a freshman anymore. You're more like a sophomore. And that's what you're kind of seeing with him, where the game is kind of coming to him, being more aggressive. Like seven free throws. 7 free throws is pretty good for a jump shooter. He's getting to the basket. I know, and then it sucks because he got his second foul when he missed an open layup where the ball slipped at the end, and then he reached in and he knew right away.
That's one of those things. It's just like an instinct almost, because it's literally the definition of a frustration foul.
Yeah, for sure. But he's just letting the game come to him, and he's not doing the whole forcing thing, and he's doing exactly what he's been doing his whole life. Is just chilling, and now he understands his role. He understands the team. He understands how he's going to get his shots. He understands where he's going to get his shots. When in the first couple months, he didn't know because he had a bunch of dudes that were coming together who were learning new things about him, about themselves. And when pieces start to fit, I think that's when Caleb is at his best. Because he knows where guys are around him. He knows if certain guys have the ball, this is where he should be. When he's not worried about that stuff and that's coming more natural, that's when you're going to have him with these really good games, because he's not being thrown into some, like, I'm not going to say some like AAU game, but like he's not being thrown into some type of unstructured ordeal where guys are like, well, should I get mine? Should I pass it? Now the offense is flowing. Guys are getting their touches and getting their looks. He's not taking bad shots. Like he's passing up some shots now that he would have taken a couple months ago, and knowing that he's going to get a much better shot maybe here in a couple of possessions. But he's growing a lot. He's growing a lot for sure.
Great point there. Phil Martelli said one of his favorite plays, or one of his favorite shots that Caleb Houston had last night, was one that he passed up, and then Michigan ended up getting a great shot. So I think that's a great point. The fact that he's not forcing things right now. Let's talk quick about Iowa. I know you got to go, and we'll do a podcast probably later in the week. It's just crazy right now with all these games and quick turnarounds, but we'll try to figure something out. But the Hawkeyes on Thursday night, Michigan looking for the sweep there. Played really well when they went to Iowa City. Keegan Murray, I think, those cramps helped Michigan out a little bit as well, but they were able to keep him in check, I guess, as much as you can. But he's a hell of a player, going to be a lottery pick. Your take on Iowa coming in here. Short rest for Michigan, but a good point. Again, Martelli, I feel like all I'm doing is repeating him, but he had a great point about how it being spring break, sure, there's going to be less students at these games, but these guys don't have class. They can get more treatment. They can recover. They can get back in for shoot-arounds. They can watch more film. So they're not going to be as tired as you normally would be on this short of a turnaround. Your quick thoughts on Iowa heading into Thursday night, senior night for these guys as well.
All right, so it's going to be Musa and Brandon Johns. They're going to be the most important players here. They've got to be able to neutralize Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray is going to get his, whether you want him to or not. He's just that good of a player. If they're able to, even like T. Will, if T. Will, Johns, and Musa, if they can come together and neutralize him with his production, Michigan has a good chance at winning. I don't think Patrick McCaffrey or anybody else that Iowa has is better than the guys surrounding Musa, T. Will, and Brandon. So it's going to come down to those three being able to neutralize him. You cannot let him go off for 30, 35 when those guys are in foul trouble and not hitting shots. If that happens, Michigan's going to lose this game. They have got to find a way to match his production with their forwards as a group, as a unit. And then, Hunter's got to eat because they're not very, very big. If they elect to trap, they have to make shots. And them being at home, you've seen them make shots more times than not. But they've got to let that come to fruition for sure.
Definitely. So that will be huge. Michigan looks like they need one more win to kind of feel pretty good about themselves. I would say it'd be a surprise if they win this game on Thursday and end up not making the NCAA tournament, but I guess you never know what can happen. Is we were talking up in the press area with Ballas and Broom last night. Michigan still has a chance of potentially getting the 4th seed in the Big Ten tournament still. They need Ohio State to lose out, Michigan State to lose to Maryland, and Michigan to win the rest of its games, but it's possible, and I know they've kind of been one of these inconsistent back and forth, you win one, you lose one type of games, but if they can find any sort of consistency down the stretch, we've seen that Michigan playing its best basketball is really tough to beat. Ask Michigan State, ask Rutgers last week, Purdue, Iowa on the road. So, if Michigan can get 2 in a row here, their first win streak, it would be in, I think, 3 weeks. So that would be massive for Michigan. So stick with us at thewolverine.com. We'll have full coverage before the game, during the game, after the game for that one on Thursday. And then, of course, on Sunday against Ohio State. And we'll see everyone over there.